Well, okay, let's go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. Good morning. And at first, I want to acknowledge those in East Tennessee. I know that there's been a lot going on this week with the hurricane and the flooding, but just wanted to let you know that we are thinking about our community in East Tennessee, and that is at the forefront. And I hope that you and your families are staying whole, and let us know how we can assist. Before we start, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Tanae Franklin, and I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at the Tennessee Justice Center. And I have the opportunity of introducing our speaker, Attorney Jane Dimwobi. Jane is an attorney with the Tennessee Justice Center. The Tennessee Justice Center's 2023 Equal Justice Works Fellow, sponsored by the International Paper. Jane graduated from Boston University in 2018 and earned her JD from Vanderbilt Law School in May of 2023. As a law student, she interned with the Public Defenders Conference, Appellate Division in Franklin, Tennessee, the Illinois Prison Project in Chicago, and helped launch the Vanderbilt Law School's newest journal, the Vanderbilt Social Justice Reporter. As a fellow at TJC, she advocates for clients on TennCare, including providing representation in administrative appeals, co-leads a coalition of advocates dedicated to improving child welfare, and manages TJC's health equity groups, particularly with the focus on child health, immigrant health, and independence for older adults and people with disabilities. Jane's fellowship project centers on tracking the social determinants of health in Tennessee and sharing data about their impacts to support community organizing and advocacy with regards to public policy. She believes that data is a key component of any advocacy effort. I am happy to introduce you to Jane. I'm excited. I've learned so much from Jane already, and I'm excited to hear more today. Jane, I'm going to turn it over to you when you are ready.
Thank you so much, Tanae. I'm really excited to be here as well. This is a new foray for TJC. As you all know, we are launching our interactive health equity dashboard. So we'll be talking about data, why all this work matters, and I'm hoping to bring you all into the fold. Like Tanae said, I'm an attorney and Equal Justice Works Fellow, and I'm working with TJC on everything you'll see today. And I'm here to talk to you all about data. So today we'll go over TJC's work because obviously this dashboard is housed at TJC, so it's going to be connected to the amazing work that we do at the organization. We'll also take a step back and look at why data matters overall. Data is a huge part of policy and advocacy work, and I'll just be sharing with you our perspective on data and our approach to sharing data. And then I'll go through the presentation of the dashboard. A quick logistical note, the dashboard will be publicly launched just following this call. So for the purposes of our conversation today, I'll be the only one that has access to it, just to walk through it and keep your attention while I show you all the nooks and crannies of the map and the associated facts. And then after the call, the website will be available to you all. So we'll go over how to access the dashboard and how to play around with it, how to get information from it, but you'll be able to use it yourself just following this presentation. We'll also have a Q&A portion towards the end of the call, and then we'll just do a quick review and closing, which will just let you know what's going on at TJC and how you can stay in touch with us. We'll move pretty quick through some of this information, but there will be several points where you will all have a chance to chime in the chat or answer some poll questions just to keep us all talking to one another as we go through this information. Data is something that I think some people might be intimidated by, but at the end of the day, there's a way to make the information informative, accessible, and just as interactive as possible. So we'll definitely prioritize that during our call today. So without further ado, let's get started. A little bit of background. So the Tennessee Justice Center is a nonprofit law firm and advocacy organization. So we use the law to advance economic, racial, and social justice by working for Tennesseans who are on healthcare and nutrition public benefits programs. You might have heard of us when it comes to Medicaid litigation. You might have heard of us when it comes to nutrition advocacy, for example, with programs like SNAP, WIC, and TANF. But really, our work spans several issue areas, and it can really be categorized into three groups, which are relevant when we discuss what you can do with data, because they have data has a connection to each aspect of TJC's work, not just by issue, but also by function. So here at TJC, we provide direct representation. As I said earlier, we work on healthcare and nutrition programs, Medicaid, TennCare Medicaid, Cover Kids. We work with people who are in different programs within Medicaid. We work with people who are on SNAP, people who are on TANF, and people who are on WIC. And we advocate for school meals. So we take clients who have an issue accessing these programs, and we work with them to resolve their issues and ideally get them full access to the benefits that they're entitled to. So the direct representation is the real meat of what we do at TJC, and is a huge part of how we learn firsthand what clients are facing as they're navigating these different programs. We also do policy and advocacy. TJC has a long history of lobbying, bringing issues to legislators, lobbying on behalf of the issues we care about, bringing issues to the legislature, and making sure that we can make systemic change at that level. We're also advocates who have partners across, Tennessee. We work on, we make sure that we're plugged in with grassroots organizations, and we make sure that we're working with people to really get the word out there, making sure our outreach is focused on the issues that matter and as effective as possible. We also conduct systemic litigation. TJC is perhaps best known in some areas for our history of litigating against the inequitable administration of some of these public benefits programs. So you can see how data can really inform how we work with our clients, how we advocate on behalf of our clients, and how we litigate when necessary. So I mentioned that we work across a couple of different programs, and I'll just, lay them out right here. Not only are we working on programs like TennCare, SNAP, WIC, and TANF, we also have an access to justice component, which connects the information that folks who are moving through the criminal legal system might have access to, and improving their own understanding of the court processes to make sure that the outcomes that they experience are much more fair. We advocate for free school meals for children in Tennessee. And through it all, we keep a focus on health equity. Health equity, what I'll emphasize throughout today's presentation, is that health equity is really the through line of all the work that we do at TJC, because in reality, health equity is a mission to eliminate health disparities. So when I talk about the data that's available, I'll keep bringing it back to these different programs that we work on: SNAP, WIC, TANF, Access to Justice, TennCare Medicaid, free school meals, and many, many more, because we have our hands in all sorts of buckets. Now we can talk about why data matters. Again, conversations around data can be very technical, but in some areas, I'll make an effort to simplify it as much as possible. But in some areas, I will be going through different data sources and just talking about why we choose these different sources and how we use them before we actually get to the dashboard portion. So why data matters is because we want to make sure that we're always using data effectively. There's an infamous quote that goes around TJC: "What gets measured gets managed." I think we can all resonate with that quote, because when we're talking about these programs and how well they work and who they target, we really want to make sure that we're collecting data about the effectiveness of the programs, and we're doing something when we have that data. So we want to measure it and we want to manage it. So I'll just leave you all with that, because I think it's really the theme of the conversation we'll have today. And again, it'll be something that I return to as we go through the dashboard. Why do we use data? We use data because it gives us new information about the issues we should focus on. Here at TJC, we work on a number of programs, as I mentioned, and sometimes we can get lost in the casework, lost in the litigation, lost in the advocacy. When we take a step back and look at population level data, it can give us new information about things that we've missed. Maybe an element of an issue that we've always worked on that just presented itself in recent years, maybe something that our clients haven't mentioned but is reflected in the data. Data deepens our understanding of a problems the clients face. Sometimes we know exactly what's wrong and exactly how to fix it. We just need to find the data to bolster our advocacy at the advocacy level. So if we're talking to legislators or if we're giving presentations and trying to bring people into the issues that we're working on and get them activated. Data that's been collected should have a purpose and application. So data matters because in so many instances, we already know that it's being collected. And the question is, what are we doing about it? So this goes back to the quote that I shared, what gets measured gets managed. Data that's collected should have a purpose and application, especially for the programs that we work on. Most people here are either in the advocate space or connected to the advocate space. And we want to make sure that you know what data is available because there are so many federal and state regulatory systems that require reporting and collection of data regularly. And because no one's paying attention to it, we don't really have a chance to dig into it, take what is important and bring it out to people who really care about it. So just always emphasizing that there are so many data collection systems and we should be giving them a purpose and be applying them as much as possible. And then finally, data matters because looking at data tells us what information is missing. We have a lot of data, but we have a lot that's missing as well, because some data systems are not reliable, some data isn't regularly collected, and other data points are confusing or just jumbled. So we look at data because we want to know what's there, but also what might not be there. So to that effect, I'm going to ask a quick question as a poll, and you can all jump in and show or give me your response, I guess. The first question is, do you seek out data in your daily work? I'm going to launch that poll in just a second. So go ahead and answer question 1. So I'll give folks just a second to answer question 1. Got some responses coming in. And once we get a critical mass, I'll end the poll. All right. So for question number 1, we have about, I'll share some results. We have about 55% of the people on the call say that they regularly collect and analyze data. A smaller percentage say that they sometimes work with data. And then we have a few people who say that they never collect and analyze data. Well, you're all in luck because today's conversation is for all of you. It's for people who know a lot about data. It's for people who are just slightly curious about data, and for other people who know nothing about data. I know we have some participation in the chat, and since Tene is moderating, I'll get to some of those comments later. So thank you all for participating. It's helpful to know that we have quite a few people here who are really data curious. So I hope that as I go through this presentation, you feel free to ask questions and really think about, steps and steps ahead, how you will actually use this in your own work. So, quick definition of health equity. Health equity is achieved when every person, regardless of race, income, education, gender, or other demographics, has access to what they need to be as healthy as possible. The goal of health equity is to eliminate health disparities, such as higher rates of infant and maternal mortality, higher rates of chronic conditions, and lower life expectancy that are prevalent for people of color. This is a really crucial definition because we are here to uplift the fact that there are health disparities. We are starting this conversation from a point that these health disparities exist. They exist in the programs that we work with. They exist in the different social determinants of health that we'll get to. And they are part of the landscape of Tennessee. And when we advocate for access to healthcare and nutrition programs, we have to incorporate a health equity mission. Like I said earlier, health equity is the core, the through line of all of TJC's work. So some of these examples here, like infant and maternal mortality, are things that we'll get to in the dashboard, and I'll make sure that we all understand how those disparities come to life here in Tennessee. So the question then is, how can we eliminate health disparities if we don't know what they are and where they exist? Spoiler alert, we can't. We need information to understand health disparities, to target certain health disparities depending on our issue area and our focus, and to go to the exact place where they exist so that we can solve the problems as effectively as possible. And we'll be talking about the elimination of health disparities, the existence and the elimination of health disparities here in Tennessee. So I've got a quick map for you, a little teaser, because when we get into it, we'll see lots of maps like these. So if you have a city or a county or a region that you're really focused on, start thinking about that, because when we go through the map, you'll have an opportunity to see that the data that you're looking for is going to be available for whatever area you might be thinking about. So now a little bit more on the nitty-gritty. This dashboard uses publicly accessible data. Our team has taken data from these sometimes convoluted data sources, filtered them through the lens of health equity, and provided the crucial information that you will need to answer questions about health and health outcomes in whatever area of Tennessee you might be curious about. So the data dashboard relies heavily on sources from the US Census Bureau, that's demographic data, income data, poverty level data, as well as data from the state. So from the reported data from the Division of TennCare and the Department of Human Services, DHS. So we really rely on these either government or we rely on these administrative entities collecting data on a regular timeline. And when they collect that data, we then incorporate it into the dashboard, or we will in the future years. This is the first iteration, but the intention is to use these very reliable, very structured, very timely data reports to feed into the dashboard. We also use data sources from the County Health Rankings and Roadmaps, which is a collaboration of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and the University of Wisconsin Population Health Institute. Every year, the County Health Rankings releases health outcomes and health factors analyses for every county in the United States. It's an incredibly detailed and comprehensive look at the state of health across the United States. So we take that information and again, we filter through it so you don't have to, and we plug it into the dashboard so that you can quickly and easily browse. We also use data from the March of Dimes, from Urban Institute, and from the Annie E. Casey Foundation to supplement our understanding of some of this demographic and other data that I've mentioned. So I'm mentioning these data sources so you all know that they're out there for you to use. And I know we have some data experts on the call, so maybe some of you are familiar with it, but for those of you who can or think you want to broach the data conversation, you want to become own data in your own way, these are some of the helpful places to start. These sources really tell you what is going on at the state level, at the county level, and what can you do with that information. So this is just a quick look at data collection in our process. Another thing I want to talk about is the geographic level that we've selected. It's really important that we break down the data in some sort of localized fashion. And in this way, we've chosen counties. It's really important that we break the data down into counties because when, as is typically available, we see data for the state of Tennessee, that obscures disparities between a county in far east Tennessee and a county in far west Tennessee, between Davidson County and Shelby County, and a smattering of counties all over. When it comes to data and the type of questions we're trying to answer, which are people healthy? What can we do to fix the issues if they aren't? The key is the more localized, the better, because we're more effective in solving problems, in asking the right questions and solving problems if we have data for much more targeted geographies. So counties are a really, really great start. But I'll also mention that counties are not the end of the road. Sometimes even data at a county level obscures that there might be disparities between zip codes. So there's a future effort to really dig into available data around zip codes and answer those technical questions as well. But for now, for the dashboard and for ease of access and understanding, we're breaking down this data into Tennessee's 95 counties so that people can start from their location in that way, and we don't have to get into the almost 700 zip codes that exist here in Tennessee. So we're emphasizing counties because we don't want to obscure the differences between counties here in Tennessee. And we want to make sure that it's clear that everyone knows the more localized, the better. Now, what about the quantity of data? We have a lot of data. We have a lot of demographic data. We have a lot of data about health outcomes, which includes mortality, like life expectancy, child mortality. We have data around public benefits enrollment. We have it all, and we'll get into what that looks like. The next question is what we don't have. In low population density counties, which some of you might be thinking of, a few of them, there's inadequate data collection for the metrics that some of the metrics that we care about. And that's just a function of not having an agency or an entity in that area that's regularly collecting the data, so it's not reliable. And in a similar way, racial disparities data is not collected for every single issue. So there are a couple issues where you'll see we have an income level and then we have the median income, and we have a breakdown of that income by race, which is a really helpful look at how race might intersect with economic stability. But for some other data points, we don't have that breakdown. And you'll see how that prompts us to ask questions, and again, gives us a way to jump into maybe a future research question when it comes to our advocacy. So keep that in mind, that there's some areas where racial disparities are not clear, and low population density counties where we just don't have that much data. And that doesn't mean that there aren't issues in that county or that we don't care about that county. It just means that the entities that be have not quite gotten the right information for those areas. So we will step in and do what we can. And I just want to emphasize, the areas where data is not adequately collected or reported should prompt us to ask more questions. Going back to what I said earlier, there are various state and federal reporting regulations that we should pay attention to. And when we are not seeing the data that we know should be collected, we should feel empowered to dig into that and to, and I'll talk about this more, potentially reach out to these different agencies and ask them about the data. So if you're not seeing data, it's not the end of the road. It's usually an invitation to ask more questions and dig in more. So I know some of you answered this, so I'm gonna reshare the poll. I'm really curious how many folks are familiar with the social determinants of health. All right, so if you could answer question number 2, I relaunched the poll.
So even if you answered it beforehand, we want you to answer it this time. Is that right, Jane?
Yes,
Okay.
we would appreciate that. All right, I'll give folks just one more minute. I see the numbers going steadily up. All right, so for this question, we have quite a few people, just over half, who are familiar with the social determinants of health, and that's great. And for people who are somewhat or not familiar, we're gonna have a conversation that's gonna catch you right up, so don't you worry. All right, let's get back into it. So our perspective at TJC is that to understand those health disparities I was talking about, to understand health equity, is to understand the social determinants of health. A quick definition, the social determinants of health are the non-medical factors that influence health outcomes. So these are things that are, so this is the status of where you're born, where you grow up, where you work, where you live, how you age, and all the systems that shape our lives. They can be distilled into 5 key categories, which are going to be guiding our conversation for the rest of the day. Economic stability, education, healthcare access, neighborhood or environment, and community. And like I said earlier, social determinants of health, they factor heavily into health inequities that different communities face. So if you didn't know too much about social determinants of health, just keep in mind these 5 categories: economic stability, education, healthcare access, neighborhood or environment, and community. So when we jump into the map shortly, we're going to be looking at these different factors for every county in Tennessee. If you're curious about one, you can dig into one. If you're curious about all, there's a way for you to just look at maybe 1 or 2 data points for each. So it just depends, like, what level of interest do you have? What's your level of curiosity, which is a hint for one of our next questions. We also dive deeper into the things that social determinants of health affect, like medical debt. So whether you're insured, where you can afford your medical bills, mortality, and child and maternal health. So we're looking at the determinants of health, and we're looking at the things that the determinants of health determine. I hope that that kind of makes sense. Now, what you're all here for, the health equity dashboard. So the health equity dashboard is going to live on the Tennessee Justice Center website. When you go to our website, you'll click on our work, and in that section, there will be a health equity page. Like I said earlier, it's not quite published yet because we want to share this information after the call and leave you all to dig through and investigate on your own. For today, like I said, only I will have access to it. So you'll navigate to our website and navigate to the health equity page. And on the health equity page, we'll talk about the data dashboard. Our approach is to share this data about the social determinants of health in a focused and informative, accessible way. We've seen dashboards that are too complicated. They require a certain level of expertise to navigate the platform and dig through the data. We've seen dashboards that are too limited because they only provide data at a state level, or they only provide data about one topic. We're taking a completely different approach. We're looking at all the social determinants of health. We're looking at health outcomes, and we're providing it at the county level. So we're trying to do it all, and we're trying to do it all in a way that's easy for you. We can actually skip the poll question for now and come back to it shortly. So when you navigate to the page, you'll see the map, the County Health Equity Dashboard, and you'll see here a title. So the subject of the map, a brief description of the map, which pulls out what data you can expect to find in the map, a way for you to access every single data point that you might care about. Like I said, maybe you're curious about one, maybe you're curious about all. You'll have a legend here, which tells you how the map is distributed. So every map has an issue that it's focusing on, and it'll tell you where is that issue the worst and where is that issue the best. So you just have a range, and it's very helpfully laid out by color. So you'll see here for life expectancy, the palest counties have the lowest life expectancy, and the richest colored counties have the highest life expectancy. And that's reflected here in Van Buren versus Williamson County. You'll see some helpful details about how to navigate the map. So if you're like, how do I see this and how do I see that? This is disclosed right here. You'll see our guide to the data, which is the source, and you'll also have a way to get the data, which we'll play around with. I'm going to now show you give you a walkthrough of the dashboard. I'm going to switch screens shortly, and then we'll go through it and then run through a couple of scenarios. And we're back. As promised, this is the health equity page at TJC. And this is the live data dashboard. So we're going to start off with health disparities because that just it's across the board, and it gives us a really good starting point to understand what I'm talking about when I say that there are health disparities in Tennessee. A good starting point is always life expectancy. Life expectancy is one of the key health outcomes that we can use to see how we're faring in Tennessee when it comes to health access and overall wellness. Like I mentioned earlier, we have a county that has really, really low life expectancy, which here is Van Buren. So if this is something you're curious about, you would say, hey, Van Buren has a really low life expectancy. I wonder how it is doing when it comes to the other social determinants of health. And you would click on Van Buren County. And you would see here helpful demographic information. This is a very low population density county with 6,000 people. It's 100% rural, and all the residents are in a rural area. The mortality rates is we have the life expectancy, but we also see here that the child mortality and infant mortality rate are 0. Now, do we think that there's no infant mortality or child mortality in Van Buren? No, this means that the data is not available, which is what I was saying earlier. There are some counties that don't have that data available. Now, that might prompt your curiosity. What about economic stability? So we see here the median income in this county, the 80th percentile income, so that's what the higher income bracket makes, and then the 20th percentile income, which is what the lower income bracket makes. There's a huge difference here. So we're seeing the 80th percentile income, median income, or 80th percentile household income is $100,000, but the 20th percentile is $18,000. So you could have someone in Van Buren making either of those as their household income. And we kind of start to talk about how that would significantly impact what resources they have access to, what programs they take advantage of, and so on. We have the child poverty rate in Van Buren County. We have the rate of education. So who's completed high school and who's completed college. Really importantly, we have the factors that really impact healthcare. What's the rate of uninsurance for both adults and children? Really importantly, what is the access to healthcare providers, primary care physicians, dentists, mental health providers? What is the environment? What is the social context? And finally, what are the demographics? So we have in Van Buren here, 95% white county, 0.3% Black, 1.3% Latino, and so on and so forth. This is a really, really good first look. And then if you happen to be curious, there are so many ways you can dig into each of these points. But I'll focus really quickly on healthcare. So Van Buren, again, because it's low population, you'll see here, the physician ratio is not reported. That doesn't mean that there are no doctors in Van Buren. It means that there's not a reliable reporting of that data. But let's compare that to Williamson County. Williamson County has an uninsured child rate of 3% and an uninsured adult rate of 7%. So that means 3% of the child population and 7% of the adult population are uninsured. These numbers are relatively low for Tennessee, which we'll talk about in a second, but compare that to Van Buren, where 7% of children and 18% of adults are uninsured. Let's just pick another county. We can look at Jackson County. 17% of adults are uninsured and 5% of children are uninsured. That's really significant for us to know, especially at TJC, but I think for you all as well. You can also look at the physician ratio. Physician, dental, and mental health provider ratios are really important because they tell you for every doctor that is in a county, for every provider that is in a county, how many people would they need to serve. So the higher the ratio, the more burden it is on these providers. So we have an extremely high physician ratio in Jackson County. That's 11,750 people to one doctor. Again, let's compare that to Davidson County, which has 1,105 people to every one doctor. That's a pretty stark difference in the availability of, oh, I lost Jackson County. Let's hop back. Yeah, here we go. In the availability of providers. And that's really something we should be thinking about and talking about. We can also, if you were using this for the first time, you can actually just browse around every county and just see. Maybe you don't know that much about provider rates and you're just learning about it for the first time. You can just hover over every county in Tennessee if you were curious and see how those rates differ. And you can do the same thing for all the different issues. Severe housing problems, social context, which tells you if there's segregation and how people report their own health, and so on and so forth. So let's say I'm really curious about medical debt because I work at TJC and I see so many clients who lose their insurance and they incurred medical debt and it's such a big issue and I want to fix it. Well, I would go to the medical debt app. I would click on it and I would read the description because it tells me what I'm going to look at. And then I would hover over different counties. I would see here that this map tells me what proportion of the population has medical debt and collections. So here, that looks like so here, that looks like in Warren County or Van Buren County, where we were at earlier, we have 7% of the population in medical debt, which is actually not the worst in Tennessee. That's here in Bledsoe County. Let's see if this helps. We also can see the median medical debt and collections and the population without health insurance coverage. Again, this is really important and really connected to TJC's work, where we can take a look at the population without health insurance overall, which in Van Buren is about 17%. That's really high. But that is even higher when you look at communities of color versus white communities. So in white communities, the uninsurance rate is 14.6%. Whereas for communities of color, it's 37.7%. That's a disparity that we should be focusing on. And it's something that we can take away from this map and plug into our advocacy whenever needed. You can do the same thing for education, for healthcare, for neighborhood, for community, for child and maternal health, and for public benefits. So all of these maps show you for every county, it paints a picture of what's going on in that county. Is it something concerning? Is it something that you can take to your own work? Is it something that you expected and so you don't really have any questions? But I just wanted to give a quick tutorial of the map, really show you how easy it is to browse and to browse across counties, whether the ones you live in, Davidson, Shelby, you've got a lot of people in those counties, or maybe one you've never heard of, Cumberland County, Morgan County. Personally, I would say I moved to Tennessee to go to Vanderbilt. So I knew, Nashville area, Davidson, but I didn't know so much about the rest of Tennessee. So this has been so educational for me. And I really hope it's educational for you so we really understand what's going on in the state beyond where we live. I won't spend too much time on the child and maternal health map, but I really like this one because you can see which maps are maternity care deserts and then the child and infant mortality in those different counties using the map. So, yeah, we're okay on time. So I'm gonna run through just a couple of scenarios where we can see how someone might use the map. So I kind of did this as I was going through, but I wanted to highlight one type of person that we expect might use this map. If you're curious about health in Tennessee, you might stumble on the TJC website because we're all over the place, right? Our name might be in the news. You might see us at an event. You might see a poster or an ad, and you're saying, well, who are these people? Well, that would bring you to our website, our health equity page. And you could just click through all of these and say, what is a maternity care? Like, what do you mean access to maternity care? Well, that's the distance to the birthing hospital. That's whether the pregnant individuals have chronic conditions before they give birth, which can really impact their health outcomes. That's whether there are any preterm births that the rate of preterm births in that county. That's whether children are born with a low birth weight. That's what's the child mortality. That's what the infant mortality is. But before you get overwhelmed, you don't have to dig into every single thing. You can just take away one thing that you can plug into, whether it's your own personal knowledge or your advocacy. So an individual who's just curious, I expect them to browse around, not staying too long on any one county, and just seeing the numbers go up or down like this. What's going on here? What's going on here? What's going on here? Now, if you're an advocate and you already work on a particular issue, let's say you do work on child and maternal health, you can use this map to really start to make more complex comparisons about the data that's presented. So this map is showing you which counties have full access to maternity care, low access to maternity care, or that are maternity care deserts. So if you're an advocate who's really passionate about these issues, you might look into the data available for just the maternity care deserts because you want to make it clear to you want your organization or the partners that you work with to really understand these are the health outcomes in maternity care deserts. And so you would focus only on those areas. And for that, I would expect that maybe you want to dig through all the different data points that are available. Maybe you want to look at the birth weight and the child mortality rate if it's available. And then finally, I want to talk about researchers, maybe even attorneys. Some of this data can be really helpful if you're angling for a very particular policy change. So if we're using publicly accessible data and laying it out so cleanly and so simply, it can still be a helpful, a useful jumping off point to learn more, to learn where the state can improve its administration of, again, public benefits programs or just different things. So it's really important that we as advocates, as attorneys, as researchers, know how to use this data in a much more multi-layered way. So if there is a policy that you work on, say in TJC's case, Medicaid coverage for doula services, the point that we're making when we talk to legislators is that there are significant disparities in maternal health outcomes in Tennessee because usually people of color, women of color who are having children cannot access quality care, and their birthing experiences in hospitals, in traditional hospitals, are not helpful. You know, there are either barriers in communication or access to a hospital and so on and so forth. There are a lot of reasons that compound to make maternal mortality worse for people of color. So we want to make doula services covered by Medicaid because it makes it affordable for low-income pregnant people. Because if you have access to a doula, you have someone who walks you through the entire pregnancy, and it has an unbelievable impact on your birth outcomes, and it's very positive. So we want to look at these areas that are maternity care deserts and look at the maternal mortality rates or the child mortality rates in those counties, and make a point to legislators that when you make doula coverage when you make doula coverage accessible through Medicaid, you're really alleviating the burden that the people in these maternity care deserts might be experiencing. When access to maternity care, which is a mix of whether there's an OBGYN near you or whether you have good experiences in the hospital, when those scores are low, we want to do everything we can to improve the health outcomes in those areas. So we would start with this data that's available here. So you might just be browsing through, just clicking around, no point that you want to really get out of this. You might care about a specific issue and you want to just see what's going on when it comes to that particular issue. Or you might be trying to take data to your legislators. But I just want to be clear that this map can serve a variety of the population, depending on what you're interested in. So I think I'm going to leave it there. I'll just quickly mention the health equity page has two sections. Not only do you have a guide to the data, which is a data dictionary, if you want definitions and sources and all of that, it also has comparisons of Tennessee's health outcomes, of county health outcomes compared to Tennessee and the US. So one that I always want to point out is child mortality. The child mortality rate in Tennessee is, for a particular county, might fall in the range of Tennessee, but Tennessee's overall is way higher than Tennessee's child mortality rate is way higher than the United States. We're at 70 when the rest of the country is at 50. So what are we doing wrong to protect children in this county? And if we have a county that the child mortality rate is 80 or 90, what's going on in that county and how can we dig through? So I also encourage you all to look at how the how the child mortality rate, or whatever factor you're interested in, differs from county to Tennessee and from Tennessee to the United States. So I'll just leave it there for now. And I know tonight we have some time for Q&As, and I'll give people an opportunity to jump in with thoughts or any kind of feedback.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. I've been taking notes as we've been moving through the presentation. I'm going to start with the comment made about the drop-down menu. Thank you, William. That is a software limitation. That's something that we noticed also, but your feedback is welcomed, and we will see what we can do about that moving forward. So we do have several questions. One of the questions from Macy Carter: are you only collecting health-related information? Does that include mental health, addiction? She's seen that there is little to no data that is coming from ministries that are serving many in this population in certain areas. So this question is about mental health and addiction.
Yeah, so that's a 50-50. So we have, actually, it's not on the dashboard. It's going to be its own page because the issue of drug overdoses in Tennessee is so significant. We're going to dedicate a separate page just to that. We do have available data from the Tennessee Department of Health, very current data around overdose rates and overdose mortality specifically. We do not have comparable behavioral health data. There is some information available, but it's pretty choppy in terms of what's available by county. So we're working on getting more reliable sources for behavioral health data, but you can expect that we'll have some data around drug overdoses by county. Right now, you can see that reflected in the dashboard as a one line, but there's so much that we can share. So it's going to be its own thing coming up.
Thank you. And Macy, I also noted the other feedback that you left with regard to data around housing, food, and more. So thank you for your comments. Feedback is really helpful for us. And so we're glad that everyone is on the call and we can only do this together. There is another question. Let me move over here. Is this just a quick question? Logistically, tactically, is this data available for download into an Excel spreadsheet, Jane?
Yes, it is. So there's a button on the dashboard called Get the Data. And so for whatever map you're looking at, you'll be able to download an Excel format. So you can pick and choose what you're interested in and take it and use it for your own purposes. We're really excited about that.
Fantastic. And tell us about how this dashboard is going to be updated on a regular basis. And specifically, will it enable comparison between the years in terms of, so we can see the effectiveness of Tennessee's policies?
So the dashboard will be updated on an annual basis to coincide with the annual releases of the Census Bureau and different state reports. In terms of, so you can expect an annual, a major annual update. In terms of, sorry, Tanya, what was the second part? I think I just blanked out.
So yeah, in terms of measuring the impact with regards
Impact over
to
years.
policies, yeah.
Yeah, so we're staying away from trends right now, just because trend data requires a little bit of statistical modeling to make sure that the data you're comparing is consistent, and we just don't have the resources to do that effectively right now. But we'll always make the data from previous years available on the website. So if you wanted to see what was going on for a certain factor the year before, that'll be available. But in terms of trying to correlate an improvement here or connect it with policies, we just at this time are not planning to do that with because of the resources we have.
So Jane, that leads me to another question. We do have folks on the call that are from academia, that might be from healthcare, that might have that capacity, those resources. Can you talk to us about the feasibility or sort of what you would like to see moving forward in terms of collaboration? How can we make this more robust for the residents of Tennessee?
Absolutely. So we really want, first of all, to give this data dashboard some time to some life of a life of its own for a little while, and see what kind of feedback we get about the utility of the different data points. But if you're a researcher, if you're an organization that wants to build out the information, I would be so grateful to have a conversation, especially about trending data, which is a whole question in of itself, but really how we can make more and more specific or answer more and more specific questions using this dashboard. The version that we've just created is for is a survey method in a way, because it allows it's the lowest entry point for anyone who's interested in this information. But we have a vision of creating much more complex and specialized dashboards that answer complex and specialized questions. So if you're interested in developing a dashboard of your own with TJC, please reach out to me. Or if you think it's important to drill down into one issue, same thing, please reach out to me or Tanae, and we can get that conversation started.
Mm-hmm. I'm not seeing additional questions, but if you do have another question in the next minute or so, please drop it in the chat or either in the Q&A portion. So Jane, can you just sort of give us background of why you're not an epidemiologist, right? You have a JD, but tell us a little bit more about how you got here, sort of what was your vision?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I've always known that data is really effective in policy making. I started law school in 2020, right at the onset of the COVID pandemic. And at the time, you couldn't open an article without seeing a data dashboard that was tracking COVID health outcomes. And I used that data to make decisions about my own life and my own actions, my decision to start law school in a very hectic year. And so I know from an individual level that data is really powerful, and it really motivates how people make their own decisions about life and how they understand the areas around them. When it comes to policy, I am really plugged into this work around Medicaid expansion. So I'm doing this because Medicaid expansion is an effort, Medicaid expansion is a mission that is seeking to get Tennessee on board with the rest of the country to expand Medicaid so that we are not excluding a significant portion of the population from accessing healthcare. To do this, we need mass people power. And to do that, we need to bring people in using data. So this dashboard is just one effort to get people interested in what in the state of health in Tennessee and how potentially we can answer questions around Medicaid expansion, or we can push the needle on Medicaid expansion using this data. So why me? It's because I really care about data. I think it's a huge part of individual lives and also our community and our work. And I really think that other people, if it's given to them in the right delivery format, can use data as well.
Thank you. I know this has been a labor of love, but it's something that we need. I have been in the academic spaces, I've been in the government spaces and other national nonprofit spaces, but to really have this data all in one place for residents of Tennessee and those serving residents of Tennessee, that's going to be helpful. We need your feedback. So thank you for what information you've already shared in the chat. As we move forward, we have your contact information. Yes, the recording will be made available, and there's a chance that we might reach out and just sort of touch bases with you down the line to sort of see how this tool is working for you and what tweaks we can make, because we want everyone to have the right access, the access to the right information, the most informative information. We are almost at time. And Jane, I'm going to turn it back over to you before I highlight our upcoming events. Is there anything else that you would like to leave the audience with?
Just echoing Tanae, this has been the first iteration of the data dashboard of this sort for TJC. So any feedback you can provide will be so useful. Please let us know how you're using it, whether individually at your organization, maybe you're even a professor in a classroom and you want students to learn about data. We really see so much potential with this work, and would love to hear how you all want to get plugged in or how you've received it. Thanks, Tanae.
Thanks. And Brant, thank you for dropping our emails in the chat. It takes a village, and we have the TJC team working behind the scenes. So we have, I'm looking to the left because this is where my other screen is. We have upcoming events. We encourage you to stay in touch with us. So make sure you join our newsletter. We have the TJC Hall of Fame Gala coming up on the 17th, October the 7th, the Market Resource Fair. We're celebrating 50 years of WIC, October 9th. October the 22nd, please put that on your calendar. That's our regional anti-hunger conference, which will be held in Chattanooga. And then towards the latter part of the month, we have our Medicaid eligibility boot camp. So we can't do this without you. We can only do this together. So please take note of these events, join our newsletter, forward them out to your networks, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you for sharing an hour of your morning with us. And we look forward to seeing you in the near future. Have a good one, everyone.